With the Oscar season ending and all the awards being given out, it's a good time to reflect upon the past winners. It seems like the movie that wins Best Picture is never actually considered the Best Picture. Everyone's always mad at it, no one agrees on it, and the most unpopular movie to win Best Picture came with the 78th Academy Award celebration with Crash. Everyone disagrees on this one because they think Brokeback Mountain should have won, or that there were other movies that were nominated that were far better. I've never seen Crash. I'm going into it with a lot of bias, but is it really the worst Best Picture winner of all time? Directed by Paul Haggis, this movie premiered in 2004, was released to the general audience in 2005, and somehow qualified for the 2006 ceremony. I know that's happened in the past, but I think it's kind of funny. Not only are the people pissed Crash won, but the movie is technically from 2004 anyways. It's about a car crash and crime and different races and how we all intermingle with each other. Honestly, if you were to pin me down and demand a plot line for Crash, I'd be at a loss for words. It's several storylines with a huge cast consisting of Don Cheadle, Sandra Bullock, Michael Pena, Terrence Howard, Matt Dillon, and my favorite of the bunch, Brendan Fraser. Filmgoers, we owe this guy a comeback. It kind of takes notes from Linklater's Slacker and Tarantino films, as far as the large cast and dispersed plot lines go. In fact, there's sometimes an underlining humor to the whole thing that made me wish it was a Tarantino story, because I feel like it would have ended up being more interesting than what the movie is attempting to accomplish. This takes place in Los Angeles, and everyone comes from different backgrounds, and eventually you learn a few surprise connections, most of which add nothing to the overall emotion of the piece. The goal is to open the viewer's eyes to the complexity of racism. There's a Persian family who is associated with the fear of Muslims, but in a wild turn of events, the Persian father himself is racist against the Mexican guy who just happens to be a straight shooter. The black detective is investigating a cop's death, but he discovers the deceased hero may have his own criminal conspiracy, but it can't be revealed because it'll be negative for the public perception due to the cop's skin color. Oh, and Sandra Bullock falls downstairs and realizes that her maid isn't lousy, but actually really helpful, despite not being as rich as Sandra Bullock. We've learned so much. Racism is complex and has been solved. I've heard that critical drumbeat so much before seeing this movie that I was overly prepared for something very offensive, especially given that it's been nearly 15 years since its release. But while I think they're attempting to paint the idea of racism in a simplistic, mild way, not nearly as complex as it thinks it is, I'll give it credit that it doesn't really give a unifying answer to the real-life situation. It just shows these stories of these different people, and that's it. It's for the viewers to reflect upon. At the same time, I have the same problem with this that I had with Green Book, ironically, another controversial Best Picture winner. I feel that these movies are made for white people to watch and agree with on social issues, when it's way more complex than what's presented. But where Green Book at least had stellar performances and a heartwarming relationship between the two main characters that's arguably a little unrealistic, especially compared to the historical accuracy of it all, Crash doesn't really have much to go on. There's so many jumbled characters on such a low runtime, you don't really get a chance to delve into any of them. I really enjoy Brendan Fraser and Michael Pena, but they're being shoved in with all these others that are considered main roles. No one has a one-scene appearance or extended sequence, they all have 5-minute pieces that go in rounds. I just wish there'd been a little more focus on maybe one or two characters and everybody else was in a supporting role. It's also a little unnerving that one of the main emotional scenes is when Matt Dillon saves a woman from a vehicle who happens to be the same woman he sexually assaulted the night before. First off, that's almost too implausible of a coincidence even for a movie, but it also just sends a disturbing message. It might be fine if they left it open to interpretation to really challenge the viewers, but no, it's obvious that both Matt Dillon and Thandie Newton look at each other differently after this encounter. You see, there's always more to a person, even if he sexually assaults you and abuses his positions of power. I'm sure that message will resonate well in 2020 of all years.
But for these really fake emotional scenes, there's also a bunch of laughable scenes, like Michael Peña's daughter getting shot by blank bullets, or Sandra Bullock falling down the stairs in an even more ridiculous way than Gone with the Wind. And it's just filled to the brim with stereotypes. I know that was the intentional point, that some people aren't what you think they are, but hey, sometimes they're exactly what you think they are. But I don't know, there's just not enough catharsis with any of these characters, and sometimes the catharsis either feels out of place, rushed, or straight up out of character. It has a suitable production design, and the editing saves us from feeling too bombastic, but I have to agree with the consensus. This simply shouldn't have won Best Picture. It should have just been Movie of the Week for audiences to go see. Maybe get a little something out of it, no matter how generic it may be, and move on. Paul Haggis himself doesn't even believe it should have won. He considered the project to be an experiment. For this kind of story and jumbled plot lines, I believe it's an attempted experiment that just doesn't stick the landing, but at least interesting in structure. The only problem is that the Oscar will always be the sticking point of criticism towards Crash, whether it deserves it or not. Maybe it just needs one defender, but unfortunately, it's not gonna be me. Thanks to Anthony for this Patreon request, and thanks to all my Patreon supporters. For only $7, you can get your own monthly movie review. Ask me to review anything I haven't already. There's also other perks like blogs, exclusive videos, and early access. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and thanks so much for watching this video.